Let's take a look at one of the most heated, emotional, sometimes very controversial, misguided, misinformed, misunderstood subject on money. Now, when I said that word, what emotions came to mind? What images triggered in your thoughts? Was it ones of prosperity or lack? Or did you get a uncomfortable feeling deep within you? And the reason I ask that is most people feel really uncomfortable when it comes to talking about money. But the reason for that is simply ignorance. That is, they just don't know what it is, what it means, how it's created, how we earn it, and the fact that money is simply just one thing. Money is an idea. It doesn't actually exist. And I'm not talking about some weird, esoteric or reality is what you perceive it. Does reality exist? I'm not talking about that. I'm saying money is literally an idea. It only holds value in our minds. And it's a really fascinating thing to understand, because if you want more of it, it will make sense to understand how money functions and what it is. Now, I'm not going to talk about the economics of money in the sense of how markets interact with each other and how there are, I suppose, theories about economy such as Keynesian theory and supply and demand scales. We're going to talk about money at its root and how you can actually earn more of it. So let's start at the beginning. Now, the reason money even exists is because there was definitely a time in our history where we were bartering, meaning you may have had some fine meat in your tent or your cave, and as I was not very good at hunting, and you were a fine purveyor of the most delicious buffalo or mammoth, I'd be coveting your meat, looking for that nice steak on a Friday night with the cave misses. And so, as I was a fine artisan creating the arrows and the bows, which you used to hunt, well, we could perhaps create a fair trade together. So I would simply be able to offer you some arrows in exchange for your meat. Now, the problem obviously comes to the point where, I still need to eat, but you don't need to hunt because you've got plenty of meat. Yet I have no meat because I've eaten it, and I've got a shit ton of arrows I need to give you. So this is where the idea of being able to exchange something of an equal value comes into mind. So there's no, the arrow does not equal the trade for the meat. There is a medium in the middle. Could be a piece of paper, could be, over time it's been many, many different functions. But the idea is maybe it was shells, for example. And so now I could trade my shells for some of your meat. You could take those shells and then go and buy some articles from a different person in the village. And this sort of concept is what money has always functioned as a sort of medium for exchange. Now, throughout history, many things have been used. So we could walk around through history and have a look through the history books. Anything from peppercorns to belt buckles to, of course, gold has been used as this medium of exchange, something with an inherent value. Now, at some point in history, paper was created, and then that became the medium for exchange, meaning that essentially the number written on it equaled a sum held by generally the government. Now, that created a trust, meaning that the piece of paper you held was secure. It was actually worth the value it said. It wasn't just counterfeit. And you would be put to death if you tried to counterfeit it back in the day. So essentially, with that very brief history lesson and that very basic one on money and how it sort of functioned early on, I suppose this is where the scarcity mindset for most people exists. That they see it as a limited form, meaning that there's a limited amount being printed, and that therefore, because there's only so much in circulation, there's only so much to go around, and that it's generally hoarded by one group of people and excluded from everybody else. Unfortunately, that's not exactly how money functions. Although in the past, maybe it has been, and wars have been fought over it, and people have been killed for it. There's no denying that. But again, it comes back to ignorance. It's not necessarily the greed that's the problem, although that is the problem in terms of the driving factor to get more money. The problem is the misunderstanding of how to apprehend and get money. See, money serves as a reward. It serves as a reward for service. Essentially, if you provide service to another person and they give you cash for it, you have earned it. Now, if you provide more in use value than they give you in cash value, you are now providing additional value on top of the service. That simple principle is how you can actually earn more money. But it's also misunderstood because people think that earning money has to do with working, which is just simply not true. But that is what we're all raised to believe. From a very young age, it's indoctrinated into us, and really because of the industrial civilization and after the agricultural age in the early 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was introduced as a way of getting the general population into the workforce. So there were conglomerates formed where only a handful of people would get a share of all the profits, built upon the backbreaking labor of thousands and thousands of people who were underpaid, underprivileged, and basically worked to death. Now that model taught an entire generation that money's hard to earn, money is scarce, money is limited, money is controlled by a few. And at that point, maybe that was true for those people. But it wasn't true overall as a guiding principle for how you earn more riches. And this is what we need to both understand more, that we can start from nothing and we can work our way up to fortune or to more wealth if we so choose. The path is there for all, so long as we understand the guiding principle. And that is, we always want to exchange more in use value than somebody pays in cash value. That basic premise is how you can earn more money, because you put out the good, it comes back to you. If you go the extra mile, well, that's where there's no traffic. That's where you get paid the lion's share, because very few people will ever go the extra mile in the work they do. Now, let's come back to the idea of working for money. That came down from the Industrial Revolution. Now we're moving into a knowledge age and an entrepreneurial age where we no longer really will be getting paid for what we know. We get paid for what we do, meaning how we act upon the knowledge we have. There are just simply better ways to earn money than simply just working. So working simply means turning up and trading time for money. So if you exchange 1 hour at a certain amount of money, there's nothing wrong with that, but always understand that it will be inherently capped, meaning there's only 24 hours in a day. So there's only so much you can work in one day, there's only 7 days a week, and there's only so many days you can work in a week. We cannot work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're earning $30 an hour, there is only so much money you'll earn per week. And therefore, you would think I'm just totally lying to you, because you would say, well, I can only work 40 to 50 hours a week outside of my other commitments. So I can't earn any more money. It's a ridiculous idea what you're saying. To not work to earn money is just ludicrous. But stay with me for a bit and let's explore a couple of other avenues of how people actually get to leverage their time to earn more money. So let's understand time for a moment. If we look at 1 hour of work, you can trade your time and provide a service to earn that money. Or you can find a mechanism or a vehicle to find other people to work that hour for you, and you take a percentage of that, meaning rather than you work, you figure out how you can create a service where 10 other people can provide that service for you, and you partner those people up with prospective clients and take a percentage of all 10. That is called leverage. Much smarter way. Now you're still working, but you're multiplying your effort. So that 1 hour, instead of being 1 hour of your work, it actually goes 10 times deeper in the hour. That is how business and entrepreneurship essentially works, and it functions in that very basic manner. Now, if we understand another way to earn money, and that is investing, we have an inherent problem. People don't have money, don't have time, and do not have the skills to invest, meaning learning to invest in real estate requires a considerable expenditure of capital to begin, and also a very large upfront investment of time to learn how to do it successfully, not to mention the inherent risk and the time it takes to acquire the right investments plus get a return to make it worth the time that you invested up front in learning how to do it. Then we could look at the stock market, which is my idea of classy gambling. And again, most people just have no idea what they're doing. They're day traders, and to make money in that, you have to be a full-blown investor with a large capital fund, and you have to know what you're doing. So I'm not saying you can't make money in those. That's not even what I'm proposing. What I'm proposing is that if you go down that route, which is clearly after what everybody thinks about working and trading time for money, the next logical step is, well, if I save a little chunk of my time, of my money I earn, I can then invest it into real estate to leverage myself and make money for when I retire. That is the standard strategies. People go from one to the next. There's a third strategy, though, that most people just don't get. And this is where the misunderstanding is. Most people see this one, but they think it's greed that does this because of all the documentaries and all the things that have happened with the subprime crisis in America and all the greedy ass banks. So if we look at it like this, there's a 1% group in the world that earns 96% of the world's income. 1%, that's 96%. Now, of that 1%, you bet your bottom dollar, there are people in that are just absolutely violating all sorts of laws, morally, legally, and in the natural kingdom by violating other people to get that money, meaning murdering, raping, pillaging, ripping people off, doing illegal schemes. But that's not all of the 1%. There's another part of that group, and this is the group that I suggest we belong to, that understand how to leverage into multiple streams of income, residual income, passive income, digital streams of income, whatever you want to call it, where you might create a product or a service that on its own can leverage time and compound it. So I'll give you a few examples. Whether you like her or not, Kim Kardashian is a good example of this. You know, she leveraged her name, but she's got a line of clothing, perfumes. Her own brand is trademarked. Her name is trademarked. She's got licensing rights for multiple brands. Now that is what I'm talking about, leverage. Now you don't need to be Kim Kardashian. In fact, don't do that strategy at all, but the way she got famous. But what you can take away is the lesson. It's what all celebrities do. They become a brand name. And then what they do is they license that brand name to already established lines of industry, clothing, sportwear, entertainment products, travel products, you name it. So what we can do is we can do a similar thing. We can spend a bit of time looking for gaps in the market, and we can create a product, and then we learn to sell that product, and we can get other people to sell that product. Or we can create a service and we can employ other people to sell that service. Again, this is the 1%. Now, thinking this way is not taught in schools. It's not taught to you generally by parents. And even if it is, are you doing it? So I encourage you, understand that money is simply one thing. It is a tool. It is a tool for you to be able to be more comfortable. It's a tool for you to have options. That's all it is. It belongs in one box, one category, and that's all it sits in. It doesn't mean it should control your life, although you're going to have to think about money frequently. It doesn't mean that it's limited or scarce. That is a mindset. There's plenty of it in the world. You've just got to ask yourself, who's got your money? What are you going to do in exchange for it? If you bring those two together, you're going to start to look at money in a different light. It will start to give you more options. And do you know money? Do you know what it was supposed to be? What it's supposed to be for? To make you comfortable. Because if you're comfortable, you can be creative. And when you can be creative, you can learn how to create more ideas to exchange in use value for more money.